So next up, we have a session called GreenFrame, Our Progress and What Comes Next.
Please help us give a warm welcome to Elisa Clarkson, the Executive Director, Business and Rights and Production Sustainability, CBC. We have Elisa Suppa, Manager, ESG and Sustainability, Telefilm Canada. Marcia Douglas, Executive Director of the Bell Fund. Mark Shapland, Program Manager and Climate Lens Facilitator, Independent Production Fund. Elsa Tokunaga, Environmental Sustainability Lead, CBC. Big warm welcome for all of them.
No, you're at the end. I should have been a producer in another. Marcia, you're at the end. All right. I don't think it's going to kill us to be a little bit out of order. Good morning, everyone. Before we get going, there's a few things I just want to share. And that is, first of all, if you're someone who goes through their life and you're trying to make your environment more sustainable, I'm sure you feel, as I do, a certain amount of resistance, sometimes opposition. And I have to shout out the Sustainable Production Forum and their 10 years, because this is the one place that I am able to come, bring my curiosity, lower my resistance to the onslaught of different opinions, and learn. So a really hearty shout out to SPF. It was the first place for us in the industry to gather and learn, and 10 years is just incredible. So thank you so much for having us and for hosting us. The other thing, and the panel doesn't know that I'm going to do this, but they're all incredible leaders, so get ready. But the other thing is the theme of this conference is the ripple effect. And I think it is so important to think about, how did you start, especially for us that have been at it for a little while. For me, I've only been at it for 6 years. I'm responsible for productions and sustainability at the English services at CBC. But how did I start? I'm going to tell you that my sustainability journey started with some people in this room. Don't look away, Zena, because I'm going to shout out you, Zena Harris, David Hardy, who both came to me along with Chris Hajek on my business and rights team to ask me why didn't CBC know about and hadn't implemented the carbon calculator. So that was 6 years ago, and I really feel proud of what we at CBC have been able to accomplish alongside so many industry partners. So thank you to all of you. And maybe as each of the speakers talks, you can talk about where your ripple effect started, and then what you're here to talk about. Okay, so as I was introduced, my name's Lisa Clarkson. I am responsible at CBC for business and rights, along with production sustainability. I could not be more delighted to be standing here basically a year after we announced and launched GreenFrame, which is a collection of the leading institutions in Canada that fund content, Crown corporations, and your national public broadcaster. We all came together to try and figure out what we could do collectively to advance sustainability in our industry. This is the part where I have to take off my glasses or put them on my head. Last year I started my remarks with a personal anecdote around a place which I hold dear, Baptiste Lake, which is a lake which is in northern Ontario. And the reason I always hold Baptiste Lake, or places like it in my mind, is that I want to remember and cherish those things that I'm fighting for. Why am I holding, advancing, trying my best to make our industry more sustainable? And I think everyone's got a place like that, whether or not it's a local park. Is it a plant on your windowsill? I think it's really important to remember why we are doing what it is we're doing. And when I think about what's happened in the last year, and I think about Baptiste Lake, there have been lower water levels, the risk of forest fires, risk of floods, and obviously, like everyone, that makes me concerned. And I'm not the only one that is concerned. Our most recent audience research at CBC, we do a new survey every year. It shows that 83% of Canadians, and for those of us that make content, Canadians are who we serve. We are trying to make content which is interesting and relevant to them. 83% are concerned or alarmed or cautious about what's happening with climate change. So when I think about that concern, I think, as we all do, what to do about it. And I, at the minute, am very influenced by, maybe that's the sign I should stop talking. I'm influenced by a neuroscientist by the name of Chris Demare. He spoke at the BBC's Climate Creatives. And he talked about the importance of action when it comes to making change. Interestingly, not some of the things I'd been thinking about before, which is around emotions, around guilt, hope, fear. No. He said the biggest motivator of change is actually showing action. And you're in luck, because that's what we're here to do. So I'm going to get, Tina, if you could just put up that slide deck and go to the second slide, I think it is. I just want to touch on for a second. I just want to touch on for a second what our overarching goal is at GreenFrame. If I have to, I'll come back to it, but I'm hoping that magically that slide deck will appear on the screen. Thank you, Melanie. This is where I think, should I have written down what our overarching goal is? But I'm going to paraphrase it as we get the slide deck queued up. And thank goodness I don't have to paraphrase it. Okay, next slide, please. This is our overarching goal at GreenFrame, to come together to reduce our environmental impact and increase the sustainability of our industry. Each organization has a different mandate, so we'll share and advance our individual sustainability strategies while collaborating wherever appropriate to maximize our impact. And you're going to see that very much when my fellow leaders on the stage talk about what actions we've been able to accomplish in the last year. The idea is that we're moving towards our goals, both collectively and individually. And so I'm so pleased to say that today you are the first audience to hear about what we've been able to do to achieve our goals. Our progress reports, our first one, is coming out today, right after this. And in it, I hope you will take a look. It is 32 pages of incredible steps and actions that the organizations that comprise GreenFrame have been able to accomplish. Next slide. This is what the report looks like. It will be available in English and in French. At the end of the session, I'll tell you where you can get it. And so just as a reminder, what are GreenFrame's goals that we are taking actions to try and progress towards? I am going to ask for a little video to be played which sets them out.
For the first time, Canada's major content organizations and financiers are joining forces in a powerful coalition. We call it GreenFrame. GreenFrame brings us together with one mission: to reduce our industry's environmental footprint and build a sustainable future for us all. How will we do it? We will harmonize our actions so producers are better equipped to implement sustainable practices. We will collaborate on guidelines, tools, and best practices to make sustainable production easier and faster. We will share resources to support industry research and initiatives. We will engage underrepresented communities who are most affected by climate change, ensuring their voices are heard and acted on. And finally, we will expand our network to share knowledge and to build impactful change worldwide. Together, we hold the power to change our climate's future.
Shapland, Independent Production Fund. I'm gonna start with you first, and if you can go to the next slide, I'm gonna ask you, Mark, to talk about that first goal, which was around communications, and what has GreenFrame been able to accomplish when it comes to communications.
Yeah, that sounds great, Lisa. You asked us at the beginning to just touch on the ripple effect, or where our work started, and I'd say it started outside of the film and TV world. Waking up to the climate crisis about 6 years ago, being alarmed, being scared, and starting to take action in my own life that slowly melded into my work at the Independent Production Fund, and realizing that even though we're only a team of 5 people supporting many projects across Canada, we have a big impact on those shows. We set the requirements for what they're doing. We deal with a lot of new and emerging creators, and we want to support them in their journey. And so, even from the beginning, I was not alone. Communication was a huge part of starting this work when it was just me advocating for this at our organization. But Lisa, you were already far ahead at the CBC. There were others that I talked to and got lots of advice and guidance from. And that has only grown since we started GreenFrame last year. And so getting into our action of jointly communicating, we meet quarterly as a group. There are 13 different organizations as part of GreenFrame. There's a steering committee, so it's the National Film Board, CBC, Independent Production Fund, Bell Fund, Telefilm, Radio Canada, and we all support different types of programming, some feature films, some documentaries, series, low budget web series, and this gives us all an opportunity to just ensure that our voice is being heard, that our producers are being heard, and we can not just take on the administration burden, but really go through what we're hearing from producers. We have a roundtable at every meeting as well, where we get to talk about updates, new incentives, new research projects, new requirements that we're implementing, so that we're all up to date and trying as best as possible to work together. We have established working groups on communications and a template standardization project, which I'll touch on sort of towards the end. And one of the things we've done is we've created a communication document that has all of the social media accounts for each organization and the communications representatives from each organization, so that when there's a new research project, event, workshop, we can blast it out. Our reach is much wider. I did a little bit of calculation over the weekend, and our total number of followers on all of our social media accounts for GreenFrame is 1.1 million. Obviously, those are not unique individuals, but that does represent sort of our big reach. IPF has 7,000. So when you combine it with the rest, when something happens related to sustainability at one of our organizations, the industry is going to hear about it. You know, one way or another, we cover a great spectrum of different producers, directors, writers, creators, cast and crew, unions, etc. And so we have a really big reach as an organization. So I think that's a powerful tool that we're using today for the progress support we've used for other notifications, and it's something we should rely on more going forward. We try as much as possible to not do these events alone. I did an event a couple weeks ago with one of your colleagues from the CBC. We try to pull each other in. I feel like when there's not just one of us, there's multiple of us at an event advocating for these, we feel stronger, we feel more supported, and we don't stand out, we belong, I think. And that is really rewarding for me, and I think everyone else. Now that we have these connections, we can think more creatively about our programming decisions. And so even if we're talking about the types of projects we fund or funding opportunities or strategies, sustainability and climate storytelling can always be a part of those conversations in a small way or another. And so, yeah, I think we can continue to do that. The Black Screen Office also has a value statement for the industry that includes environmental sustainability as one of their 11 shared values. 140 organizations signed on, and when I look at those organizations, there are provincial funders, there's so many more organizations than just us, which I think only increases the fold. And Black Screen Office is a part of GreenFrame, obviously. And so we have a big impact and a big outreach, and that has been one of the key goals and what we've gained working together. The last thing I'll say is, through this communication and all of our funders, we have documents that producers need to submit as part of their application requirements. Sometimes those documents can be different, and so a producer has to go in and submit a budget for the same project, but has to do multiple different budget templates. And so we work together to standardize those. And so we thought, why not standardize sustainability development checklists, sustainability plans for production, and final reporting documents? More work needs to be done to get to that place, but we did do an analysis of all of the documents that are floating around the Canadian industry, and so we have at least that number, and we have all of them and what the differences are between them. And so hopefully in the new year, we're going to sort of narrow down that focus so that there are a limited number, producers have clear guidance on which ones they should fill out and why, and that there isn't a whole lot of duplicate or triplicate work for the same document, because that can be such a huge time burden. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say on jointly communicating.
Just one thing I think I'm going to add from my perspective about communications. I think one of the reasons that GreenFrame works is because of those different vantage points that you mentioned, but that each of those organizations plays a really meaningful role. Like you mentioned the steering committee, and what we've done is that there's a different chair of the steering committee for each meeting. So whether or not the organization is big or small, that organization can have an imprint on what's on the agenda. And the working groups that Mark mentioned, there is a lead for each of those, and I'm just going to shout you out as being the lead of a couple of those working groups. Communications, which you mentioned, how do we communicate together with a much bigger impact? That million+ number is really interesting, and also that the templates working group as well. So I just want to shout you out as being the helm or the chair of both of those. And so that means that we can just do more with, what is a pretty small group of people, 11 organizations, but responsible for billions of dollars of production in Canada every year. So I'm going to move maybe to, did you want to say something else, Mark? Or?
No, thanks.
Elisa Suppa, who is from Telefilm. And
Hi.
she's going to talk about the goal that we established around sustainable production and being more sustainable and supporting that. So, Elisa.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to comment on my sustainability journey, which you asked at the beginning. At Telefilm, I think it was around the spring of 2022, we realized that we were very focused on EDIA, and we were focused on our Indigenous Reconciliation Plan. And what we weren't looking at was the impact of our work in community and on the environment. And so we quickly, I think we started to run before we could walk. So there was a lot of learning. And in 2022, that's when we formalized our commitment and started. In terms of the production, I think what this collective does is really try to empower producers, production companies, creators to take on the challenge of being more sustainable without it feeling ominous or burdensome. So there are, as Mark mentioned, the tools like the sustainability plan. And I think most of the funders who are actively funding productions now will either have some type of requirement, either a carbon reporting requirement, sustainability plan, or a checklist. And this is really, I mean, these are early days or early years, let's say. And so we're trying to streamline, as Mark said, and facilitate that kind of information sharing. And this is really to empower the producer and the production company to make better decisions before starting their production. And I think what we're doing, what we're doing is also not asking more of the industry than we're asking of ourselves. So I think most of the organizations here have made an effort to train their own staff, the business people, the analysts. I know IPF has done that. CBC has done it with a customized program. Telefilm has done that on repeated occasions for staff, including not just production awareness, but also digital sobriety, how to better use our digital tools. So we're all trying to inform and educate the people that you will encounter when you're coming to us for funding. Because, I mean, that's part of the engagement, is really to make sure that everyone from the funder to the production entity is being responsible.
Sorry, Elisa, can I just get Tina, can you put up the sustainable production slide? I was trying to do it self-help, but that did not work.
Okay.
Sorry, Elisa, keep going. She's just going to put up the slide to back up what you're saying.
And I think what you tallied in the report is that over 4,000 people have been trained. So it's just to give you an extent of how many sort of how many people are involved in this whole process, and this is part of our commitment. In addition to the tools that we talked about, I think we're also trying to build capacity externally as well with training of producers and production companies. And I know that Telefilm did a unique, first of its kind, if I can say, funding of a panel for sustainable production through an Indigenous lens. So we worked very carefully with the Indigenous Screen Office and with a company called Sacred Earth to really look at sustainable production practices through an Indigenous lens. And that was a very successful, first of its kind training. And I know CBC, IPF have done similar sort of outreach programs. And then, of course, you all have access to the provinces that have great programs that are active, and there's no charge for those. And we're encouraging that kind of participation.
Fantastic. If you could move to the next slide. Also, Tokunaga from CBC, if you could tell us about what GreenFrame has done towards both, I think you're going to address both research and also our attempt to better understand marginalized communities and audiences.
Exactly. So I'll start off with expanding industry-focused research. So under this goal, we aggregated sustainability information and shared high-level observations and conclusions that flowed from this sustainability data that we shared. So I just want to quickly highlight some of the fantastic findings that have been shared by some of our members. So Bell Fund in 2025 saw 100% of their applications submit with a sustainability plan. CBC and Radio-Canada each released sustainable production reports from both 2023 and 2024. Organizations like the Canada Media Fund, the Independent Production Fund, the National Film Board, Shaw Rocket Fund, Telefilm, they're all receiving sustainability data, whether it's in the form of things that you guys mentioned, sustainability checklists, sustainability plans, carbon footprints. So these have all together really helped us further our understanding of sustainability in the field. So we know from various sources now that travel and transport are the biggest emitters on film sets in Canada. We know that waste management and going paperless are actions that are often taken on various sets. We also know that there aren't a lot of tools or guides that are available for those in animation. We know that production sustainability is also a growing field, so increasing numbers of productions are taking more and more in-depth steps. So knowing these things, both positive and things that we can work towards, give us a baseline so that we can more accurately and decisively better understand where to head with regards to making production more environmentally friendly. So in addition to sharing valuable research and takeaways from these organizations, GreenFrame also set up a working group to help us identify research topics that highlight gaps in our knowledge or awareness related to sustainable production that we think might be valuable for the industry to know. So essentially, what this means is we want to build a shared pool of research ideas that reflect collective priorities and can be pursued by individual funders to advance sustainable production goals. So through this working group, we've had some consultants and industry professionals come and speak to us and provide us with ideas for what to pursue. And we've also brought our own knowledge and observations from the industry. So we've had discussions that range from insurance and climate risk or clean energy guides for producers, but the idea that resonated the most has been food waste and the circular economy. From our shared reports, including CBC's, Radio-Canada's, and Telefilm's, we know that food waste in productions is a significant concern, a social concern, and an environmental concern. And Lisa, at the beginning, you asked us to kind of share what brought us into this, into sustainability. So I'll talk about food waste as a passion of mine. My dad is Japanese, and in Japanese culture, every single rice grain that you leave on your plate represents a flaw in your future partner. So for me, reducing food waste started when I was very, very young. So, and hopefully everyone in here, we're trying to work towards getting you guys flawless partners in the future, okay? So to give this a little context, that's not personal, in Canada, according to a report by Second Harvest, we create around $58 billion of food waste every year. 40% of this is easily avoidable. This is equivalent to the annual cost of groceries for 3.7 million Canadian families. And in these days, we all know this, food banks and other nonprofits are really struggling to support the record number of Canadians who are relying on them. So from an environmental perspective, the same report noted that avoidable food waste contributes roughly 25 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually. What does this mean? That's also equivalent to an estimated 250,000 flights from Toronto to Vancouver. So overall, reducing food waste on set isn't just about being efficient and environmentally friendly, it's also about being socially responsible. So we're still trying to figure out our next steps because it's a vastly complicated and big issue, but we're currently exploring how to develop a toolkit of best practices that any production can use right away. This will draw from both real production experience and already existing sustainability frameworks. We know, like as Elisa mentioned, that there are many resources and organizations out there that exist already that are all working towards very similar goals. We definitely want to integrate and collaborate with these organizations. We're also starting to speak about the issue more, like now, so making it an issue that is more top of mind. So please come to me if you have an idea of how to work together or implement this to make us all more environmentally, socially conscious and get better partners in the future. So next, please.
Next slide, please.
So the second goal that I'm talking to is to better understand how climate change impacts communities that are often overlooked and to encourage their participation in our efforts. So to do this, we consulted with our members who actively work with equity-deserving audiences to better guide our focus. And CBC also did key research last year on how climate storytelling affects these audiences, which we shared with GreenFrame. This helped spur the conversation and helped us develop another lens through which we can view climate change. In late 2024, I think you mentioned this, Telefilm and the Indigenous Screen Office supported a first ever pilot workshop on sustainable filmmaking and best practices from an Indigenous lens that was organized by Secret Earth. The event was a hit, bringing together 87 industry professionals from Indigenous, English, and French communities, as well as international guests. We've used platforms like SPF to host discussions. So again, during SPF 2024 virtual, Telefilm presented a panel discussion titled Sustainable Storytelling, Uplifting Indigenous Land Stewardship in Film and TV. So a vital part overall of this mission to bring sustainability to the industry is recognizing that there are already very, very old traditional knowledges and practices that have existed in this country for centuries. So this is an ongoing commitment that we'll all want to learn more about and see how we can better understand the impact on marginalized audiences. So back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Elsa. I just want to say before we move to the incredible Marcia Douglas that Elsa Tokunaga is CBC's sustainable production lead. She's here to help the community, and a riff on the ripple effect. The theme of this conference is that I told you a little bit about those people in the room who came to me and asked me about the carbon calculator and why CBC wasn't using it and doing it. Well, I did use it and do it. We made it mandatory actually in 2022 and then 2023 for all of our productions, including our independent productions. Well, that suggestion rippled through me, boom, over to Elsa, because I poached Elsa from the workforce of This Hour is 22 Minutes, and they had hired her because when we required the carbon calculator, they said, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do this, and they hired her to help them execute that. So it is just, to me, proof that we are also interconnected in this work, and sometimes you toss something out, you don't know where it's gonna go, but it can have some really massive effects. So I just wanted to make that link, and then over to you, Marcia, and the next slide, please.
I sat in the wrong place. Sorry, we came in order. So I'm going to talk about a couple of our goals, but as you wanted us to start a little bit with our journey, I feel like an old lady, because I am one. But, you know, I think being aware or trying to be thoughtful in work and life really started for me as a student. So I'm thrilled that we have students here today. Because you will be the voice of change. But I'm so old that I remember when we talked about acid rain, like it started with like acid rain and pollution, and then we all had to stop using aerosol spray cans. And in a good and terrifying way, as you talked about earlier, Lisa, you know, we're having much more global conversation. So as a child of immigrants and seeing the impact of climate change more acutely in the global south and looking at what climate migration looks like, for me, it's been a piece that has been a part of what I try to bring to my work in various organizations. So I had the privilege of being part of the formation of Ontario Green Screen, for example. I previously worked at the Canadian Media Producers Association, so was part of the team there and trying to help develop and work with many of you on advancing sustainability initiatives for producers. I worked at the Canada Media Fund, and similarly there, now I'm at the Bell Fund. So I have the good fortune of working also with my whole team, like you said, Mark, where we look at how sustainability is a factor, but a little bit that's the ripples that I think each of us can bring forward and do in our everyday lives and in the work we do and in coming here and both speaking to all of you and listening to all of you and what you have to offer. And that's a bit our other goal here. So a key tenet or objective of coming together as a group for GreenFrame was about accountability. So it's not just us in some little room talking to each other, but it's us bringing back and sharing what we've learned both with each other and with all of you, and learning as individual organizations what more we can be doing and how we can step forward together. So a little bit about where we're at right now and where we will continue to learn and grow together. But as part of setting up this coalition, we set forward a set of governance guidelines. They are published Grateful to CBC because all of this lives on the business and rights page if you're looking. But you can see how we've sort of pieced together trying to step forward in decision making as groups, even though we all, I think it was sort of expressed at the beginning, are individual organizations. We do look for those opportunities to work together to both ease but also accelerate the transition of the industry. Each of the organizations brings multiple people, but including committed senior people within the organization so that we can support each other in that decision making and really be in a place to make decisions. And then a big part of it actually is this annual report, which you got to see a little bit earlier on screen, and as you mentioned, it's being released today. It's available both in English and French. It is our first report, so it is our first steps. You will see, because there are organizations the size and scale of IPF and Belfund that are very small, and organizations like Telefilm and CBC that are not as small, that we're all at slightly different places in our journey and at the same point remained fully committed and are trying to work together to support each other in those goals and advancement.
Next slide.
Yes, and then I'm also speaking about collaborating globally. So in addition to trying to meet together within Canada, we are continuing to look at what we can learn internationally. And different organizations are doing some of this work on their own, but it's also a great opportunity to bring that back to the group and to learn together. So for example, you'll see the CB4S, that stands for Canadian Broadcasters for Sustainability, which we should pause for a second and just give amazing credit to Lisa and her fearless and unstoppable vision in bringing together all of us. And in Canadian Broadcasters for Sustainability, a large group of the Canadian broadcasters to try to work together to, similar to even the first panel today, to demystify what may be anxiety or concerns or challenges and to find solutions. So working with CB4S, GreenFrame, and even others, because I think you really expanded that invitation list. We've been holding sometimes larger meetings that are less about the work we're doing and more about trying to share and learn from what's been happening or working internationally. So for example, there was a meeting with the European Broadcasting Union in January of 2025, so we could learn more how different broadcasters within Europe are approaching this, within their commissioning strategies, within their funding and support of projects, because different territories are also approaching this slightly differently. And frankly, Europe is farther ahead than we are, so what can we learn from their best practices or some of their challenges up until now? And then also in May, there was a meeting with BAFTA Albert. So that's out of the UK. That is a tool you may have heard of, especially if you, worked with CBC. But another great tool that has been in market and is evolving. And again, what can we learn from them? And actually, there have been a number of Canadian producers and projects using some of these tools too. And multiple members are actually or have been part of the United Nations global efforts through a group called ECHA, which is the Entertainment and Culture for Climate Action. We haven't talked about it a lot here, but another lens that some of us have used or have looked at are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So when you talked about equity and inclusion, we talked about the impact on community. There's a lot of these pieces that do relate to the work that all of us do as storytellers, as filmmakers, as producers, as people interested in this. And it continues to be a touch point and a place for some of the orgs just to look at and examine more holistically where we're at. And Canada as a nation has signed on to some of those climate accords as well, and those the SDGs as they're sometimes called.
Thanks, Marcia. So next slide. I'm just going to say a few words about our next steps. We're in the process really of planning what our actions are going to be for the year that we're in. And I encourage any of you to come to any of us and suggest things that we should be working on, that we can do better and do faster to collaborate together. I do also want to take a moment to reflect that our industry has really made some incredible strides in the last 5 years. We really were starting at a very basic level 5 years ago, and as Marcia says, we were behind Europe and the UK, and we're now caught up and, if not ahead of some of those territories in some areas. So let us know if there are things you think that we should be working on. I do also want to say, if you want to be part of those mega meets that Marcia mentioned, I really crack those open for anyone who's in the industry who's interested in listening and learning, so just send me an email. And what are we going to be doing in the next year? Some of our steps and points of focus have been mentioned. When it comes to communications, we will be reaching out and looking to collaborate and accelerate with other organizations that exist, both in Canada. Producing for the Planet is one of them. Canadian Broadcasters for Sustainability, some of the provinces and territories. And internationally as well. What can we learn from those other jurisdictions that will help us move faster? So focused communication with leading partners is one thing. Second is in terms of research, we will, as Elsa mentioned, be really doing a deep dive into what we can do about food waste. How do we help those in the industry minimize it? What are the tools that we can develop for that? So please stay tuned. Those will be our actions, and I think it's time for questions. But before I turn it to questions, so start thinking, I do just want to do a massive, massive shout out to the leaders on the stage. Please grab them at the lunch, at the breaks, because they are people that are trailblazers and they're leading the way. So that's Mark Shapland from Independent Production Fund, Marcia Douglas, who heads the Bell Fund. She didn't say that. That's Elisa Suppa, working on sustainability for Telefilm, and Elsa Tokunaga, who is CBC's environmental sustainability lead. So with that, des questions ou des commentaires? Any questions?
Can I just, while people are thinking of their questions, just point out that a member of my team who's here, who didn't know I was going to do this, but Ellie, if you want to wave your hand, Ellie is here from the Bell Fund team, or Fond Bell, and is a big part of Entourneuvert in Quebec as well.
Yes. Okay, we'll do this question first.
I see a question in the back.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Olivia. I'm here part of the group of Humber students, and I have a question for Elisa. So looking at Telefilm and the funding that we can be looking to Telefilm for, I wanted to know what aspects of sustainability, whether it's in the messages or the overall approach of a production, that Telefilm will look for and prioritize in terms of where the funding is going for.
I just need to better understand your question. So are you asking if Telefilm's looking at your creative or?
Yes, sorry, what aspects is Telefilm looking for in terms of the sustainability approach that we're pitching for a project? What aspects of sustainability is being prioritized in the funding?
Okay, well, thank you for your question, and I'm glad you're here. In terms of assessment of the project, that really is an adjudicated process that heavily weights the creative process. Sustainability at this point isn't weighted into that assessment. But once you're in the stream and you're receiving funding, and hopefully you will, we will expect certain deliverables from you. So a sustainability plan, which we actually have created a template to facilitate that. And then at the end of your production, a carbon report. Those are two deliverables that will be sort of attached to your project, and hopefully it's success. So,
Hold the phone right up to your chin.
did I answer the whole? Okay.
Can I just add one thing? I guess I'm up here for CBC. So I will say for CBC, when it comes to climate storytelling, that the programmers do look at that, but I have to define it. Climate storytelling isn't just stories about the climate. It's really about bringing what's happening with the climate into the story in an authentic way. That can be in any genre. whether or not it's kids programming, drama, comedy, documentaries. For some of the programming, the content is about the climate, but it isn't narrowly interpreted and limited to that. So we do look at the climate as part of your authentic storytelling when we're receiving pitches, but it's defined broadly as opposed to narrowly, because you can imagine you don't want the public broadcaster only supporting stories about the climate, but also in equal measure, they better be in there as well. And just one last shout out, we did, Elsa and I, launch a little fund for creating climate content called Sprouting Seeds of Change. We'll send the link around. It's about YouTube Shorts. That's a big platform we're on now. And it is about YouTube Shorts about the climate, whatever the creators wanna say to audiences.
Hi, good morning, and thank you. I'm James Porteous. I'm the co-chair of the DGC Ontario Sustainability Committee, and I want to applaud all of your initiatives because they're spectacular. And my question to you is sort of a back-ended question because, and you've answered some of this, but I'd like to expand on it if possible. Is there a plan in place to monitor, assess, and audit the efficacy and sustainability of these green initiatives so that we can stay away from greenwashing and make sure that we get something that is really effective and all these programs so they can be audited at the end? That's my question. Thanks.
I can start. And I just want to reverse shout you out. DGC Green has just been doing some incredible work, and it's really important for all of our industry organizations to be working together. On the issue of greenwashing, well, put bluntly, it's pointless if it is greenwashing. It's pointless. And so I think the balance in my mind is taking the steps that are appropriate at the moment in time and then moving to the targets. For CBC, we do have targets which we've put out on our website. And again, speaking for CBC, just on the example I was giving, my first step was, it was actually, this was Zena's idea, education. Then we moved to requiring the carbon calculator. Then we, because Canada actually isn't eligible to use the certification through Albert in the English market. So then we devised a carbon reduction plan to get at that point that you're making, which is, are there real measurable things happening by requiring people to measure and report on it too? We also report on it. The final step, though, I will say, in terms of our journey on independent production, is for all returning programs and series, we are now, as of April this year, requiring certification through Albert. So that's yet another step to try and edge us more closely towards what is this measuring doing? Why measure it? Is it meaningful? And so we'll keep on pushing those boundaries about measuring and sharing back with the industry what we're learning. So that's from CBC's perspective.
From Telefilm, I think for us it's important accountability and reporting. So, I mean, we launched our first ever climate risk report because we're looking also at how we work as a corporation, as an employer. And all these things are important. No one wants to risk or be engaged with greenwashing. So I think by making an effort to be accountable to the industry and report back, this is how we respond to that concern.
I would just add, so for Bell Fund, we're requiring everyone to do a sustainability plan. We're actually using, as we're all working through the template things, but we're using the Producing for the Planet template because it came with tools and resources and a wrap report. So to your point about that reporting, that's part of the accountability. And then part of our, let's say, commitment as a group is that we really are trying to do analysis of those pieces so that we can share them back. And that's part of some of our reporting to you. Certainly greenwashing is a concern. I think the other piece I would add is that we're engaging experts in sustainability to analyze those reports and plans too, so that it's not it's people who are informed, but we're not there yet. But I will say there are broader industry conversations too, to look at not only, I think there are different sets of standards, but looking at standardizing standards and then potentially what auditing or certification of those standards may look like. But that takes time, and it takes collaboration to give people the tools and the resources that we'll need to get there.
Yeah, can I add, Lisa, to this? I think it's a really important question. The results are essential. We require, when producers apply to our production program, a draft carbon footprint. So predicting the amount of emissions that your production is going to create during production. We also require a sustainability plan. And so hopefully, when you initially plan and conceive of your production as is, you're going to get a predicted number of emissions. But then when you implement your sustainability plan as part of productions, hopefully by the end, when you do your final carbon reporting, which we also require, it is lower than what you actually predicted. It gives producers also an opportunity to test the calculator, learn from it. We provide free training for all of our producers through Green Spark Group and Anton Ver. They do the training for all of the producers that we fund. And then they also have to submit a final reporting document. So even if they weren't entirely successful, maybe they went over their predicted emissions, not all of their actions were implemented on the production, they can learn for next time all of the challenges and obstacles that they've faced. Hopefully they can find solutions for them in their next production. And so we hope to have the biggest impact possible on the current production we're funding. But as I mentioned, we deal with lots of new and emerging creators who are in the beginning stages of their career. And we can help them out, support them, provide training, that when they go on to be in writers' rooms or directing their own bigger budget projects, show running their own shows, they'll have the tools, skills, and sustainability and climate storytelling will be essential to what they do moving forward. So yeah.
Can I just add one more thing? I think Telefilm and Elisa really led the way in updating the budget templates, the standard budget templates for the industry, I'm gonna say a year or 2 years ago. But adding lines relating to equity, inclusion, and sustainability in all of the accounts to really help lead people through. And that data is now something we can also use, even with regard to your question about greenwashing, to better measure the resources needed and the investments that are actually being made, not just checking a box, but where there's actual focused investment.
Right. There's new, it's no longer new, but there's line items now in the official budget template that acknowledge the different expenses a production company or producer will incur in order to be more sustainable, in order to be more inclusive, and accessible as well. So all of that was revamped, and we did extensive consultation with the industry to get to those new line items, and that's now a recognized expense.
Because I have the mic, I'm just going to say one last thing on this. There's no mystery in this industry about where, the carbon is being burned. We put out a report every year. It's in travel and transport. And so we do need to work together to figure out, the last panel is sort of an interesting aspect of that, but we have to work together to figure out how do we measurably reduce our reliance on the energy sources and do it together. So, I just want to say that. One more.
Okay, hi. I feel like my question was almost being touched on in that last one, but I'm wondering, within all of your organizations, I know that there's free training. Green Spark Group has amazing courses, but I know Ontario Green Screen and like Real Green and BC have free courses. And I'm wondering if that's been a discussion within your organizations of advocating for everyone in your organization or cast and crew that are funded by you to have that kind of training become mandatory, so that every single cast and crew is going on to a production with that same information, in hopes that everyone can be on the same page, as sustainability is a health and safety concern. So that kind of training becoming mandatory.
I think it was touched on earlier, but internally, part of the GreenFrame commitment is to offer training to staff that are part of the organizations. It's really not the role of most funds and broadcasters to get into that level. It's the unions and guilds. But I think there's a lot of work to share that information, to talk about that importance, especially to the producers. Like, as opposed to some of the other funds, for example, Val Fund requires not only that sustainability plan as part of the application, like it is part of our point system in evaluating. So you are, all of those considerations are part of our work in different ways, but it's up to the unions and guilds in terms of setting that requirement from a staffing, cast and crew perspective. But I also think there's a tiny opportunity, I'm gonna throw it back to you, Lisa, and Seeds of Change, in terms of also another level of additional information and more panels this afternoon. And we're all here not only to speak to you, but also supporting this event because we're also trying to facilitate and support access to those resources.
Just to underline what Marcia said, so that the training for the organizations that we control, the 11 GreenFrame, we did, that was the 4,000 number, we did offer that up. And we did have a discussion about, as a group, should we create our own? But the fact is that the industry organizations have some fantastic training already. So we just thought that's the don't want to duplicate. We want to focus where we can make a difference. So many of those in our organizations have in fact taken that training. At CBC, we're lucky, Athena Trisellis is in the audience. We actually did develop our own course for staff. So that is what we did. And because Marcia basically invited me, every April, there's Seeds of Change. Everyone is welcome, and please invite 10 friends. The objective is to go as broad as possible, and it's basically sustainable news you can use. It's what is happening in short bursts in the industry so that you can vault up to where we are currently as quickly as possible. We've done it every April. This will be our 4th, and I'm just happy to say we've captured thousands and thousands of views within the Canadian industry, so I'm super proud of that. I think that's the end of our thing. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for such amazing questions and for listening.